The lost decadent rain fell outside the window, soft and cold, as Alara sat quietly in her wheelchair. She watched the drops slide down the glass, each one leaving a little trail, just like her own life, moving but going nowhere. It had been 10 years since the accident. 10 long, heavy years since she last stood on her feet. Back then, she was full of life. She used to run through the streets of her small town, play sports, climb trees, and dance under the stars. She could still feel the wind in her hair if she closed her eyes. But all of that had been taken from her in one single night. The car crash was fast and cruel. She barely remembered the sound, metal against metal, the screech of tires, her own scream. Then silence. When she woke up in the hospital, her mother was crying. The doctors stood around her bed and spoke in low voices. "I'm sorry," one of them said softly, not looking at her eyes. "Your spine is damaged. You will not walk again." Those words had stayed with her for years. She hated them. They became a shadow that followed her everywhere. At first, she didn't believe it. She tried everything. She went to doctors, therapists, even strange healers who burned incense and whispered strange prayers. She exercised until her arms shook and her hands bled from holding the bars too tightly. But no matter what she did, her legs stayed dead. They refused to move. People around her moved on with their lives. Her friends stopped visiting after a while. Her father left, saying he couldn't watch her suffer. Her mother tried her best. But even she grew quiet, tired. Sometimes Alara would wake up in the middle of the night and just sit there, staring at her legs, willing them to move. But they never did. She thought about ending it all more than once. But something inside her refused to give up. She didn't know what it was. Pride, maybe. Anger, or just stubborn hope. One day, when she was sitting in the hospital garden, a man approached her. He wore a black coat and dark glasses, even though it wasn't sunny. He stood in front of her and said nothing at first, just looked at her. Finally, he spoke. "You want to walk again?" She looked at him, confused. "Of course I do," she said bitterly. "What if I told you," he continued, "that there is a way, not just to walk, but to run, to jump, to be stronger than you ever were?" She laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "I've heard that before," she said. "Everyone promises something. No one delivers." "We deliver," he said simply. Then he handed her a card. It was black, with only one line written on it. Project Prometheus, Human Enhancement Program. "You are invited." She turned it over in her hand, frowning. "What is this?" she asked. "A chance," he replied. "The last one you'll ever need." Before she could say anything else, he walked away. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the card. A chance. After all these years. But at what cost? What did enhancement mean? What did they want from her? But the idea wouldn't leave her mind. It wrapped itself around her thoughts, warm and dangerous. What if it was real? The next morning, she called the number on the card. A cold voice answered. "Miss Alara Gray?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "Be at the corner of 7th and Pine Street at midnight. Bring nothing. Tell no one." The line went dead. All day, she wondered if she was making a mistake. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, she felt a strange energy growing inside her. For the first time in years, she felt alive. She put on her jacket, rolled herself to the door, and left. The streets were empty and dark when she reached the corner. The air was heavy, full of fog. She waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Then she heard the sound of tires. A black van stopped in front of her. The door opened, and 2 men in black stepped out. One of them spoke. "Miss Gray, please come with us." They lifted her wheelchair and rolled her into the van. Inside, the lights were dim. Another man sat opposite her, holding a tablet. He didn't smile. "You understand what you've agreed to?" he asked. "Not really," she admitted. "Good," he said. "If you did, you might have said no." The van drove for what felt like hours. She couldn't see outside. She didn't know where they were taking her. But for the first time in 10 years, she didn't feel like a prisoner in her own body. She felt curious, hopeful, afraid. All at once. Finally, the van stopped. The doors opened to reveal a set of steel stairs leading underground. One of the men nodded at her. "Welcome to the program," he said. She looked down the dark stairs, then at her motionless legs. She swallowed hard. And then, slowly, she gripped the wheels of her chair and rolled forward into the unknown. The procedures. Steel stairs were cold and narrow as Alara moved down, the wheels of her chair creaking softly in the silence. The air grew colder with each turn, and the light above her grew dimmer until there was only a faint blue glow below at the bottom. A huge metal door stood waiting, marked with a strange symbol, a circle crossed by a line, glowing faintly. In the dark, 2 guards in black suits stood on either side of the door, their faces like stone. They didn't speak. They didn't even blink. One of the men who brought her here stepped forward and placed his hand on a scanner. The door hissed, then slowly slid open with a deep, heavy sound. A strange smell came from inside, sharp and clean, but also faintly metallic, like the air before a storm. Alara rolled forward and entered. Inside. The walls were smooth and white, but there were no windows. The room stretched far ahead, filled with strange machines, glowing tubes, and long silver tables. Figures in white coats moved silently between the machines, checking screens, writing notes, whispering things she couldn't hear. A tall woman in a white coat approached her. Her eyes were bright, almost too bright, and her smile was thin, but not unkind. "Welcome, Alara," she said. "My name is Dr. Varen. I will oversee your procedure." Alara swallowed hard. "What exactly is going to happen?" she asked. Dr. Varen's smile widened just a little. "You are going to walk again. But more than that, you are going to become something better, stronger, faster. We call it the awakening." The word sent a chill through her. "What does that mean?" Alara asked softly. Dr. Varen didn't answer. Instead, she motioned to 2 assistants, who came and gently pushed Alara's wheelchair toward a glass chamber at the center of the room. The chamber was round, with walls of thick glass and dozens of tubes running into it from the ceiling. The floor inside was covered with faintly glowing symbols, the same circle and line she saw on the door. As they rolled her inside, she heard something, faint whispers, so low she thought she imagined them. She glanced around but saw no one speaking. The assistants helped her out of the chair and laid her down on the table in the center of the chamber. For the first time in years, she felt her legs being lifted and moved, but not by her own strength. The assistants strapped her arms and legs down with soft silver bands. She couldn't move. Dr. Varen stood outside the glass, tapping on a screen. "Do you feel ready, Alara?" she asked. Alara hesitated. "What happens if I say no?" Dr. Varen tilted her head, studying her like a scientist studying an insect. "Then we wipe your memory and send you back to your broken life," she said plainly. Alara clenched her fists. "Do it," she whispered. The glass walls closed around her, sealing her inside. She felt the chamber hum softly, a low vibration. Under her back, the lights above her grew brighter and brighter until she had to close her eyes. Then she heard a mechanical voice. Subject 13. Initialization sequence begins. Phase 1. Neural connection. Something cold and sharp touched the back of her neck. She gasped as a strange heat spread through her spine, into her legs, into her fingertips. She opened her eyes and saw flashes. People running, machines roaring, strange creatures she couldn't name, a battlefield, a city in flames, and herself, standing tall in the middle of it, but her eyes were glowing blue. She blinked, and it was gone, but her body, felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. The voice spoke again. Phase 2, skeletal reconstruction. She heard a loud crack, and pain shot through her bones. She screamed, but the straps held her down. She felt her spine twisting, her ribs tightening, her legs burning as if fire flowed through them. But underneath the pain, something else stirred. Power dot outside the glass. She caught sight of Dr. Varen and her assistants watching calmly, making notes on their tablets. To them, her screens were just another part of the process dot. Then came Phase 3. The voice said, Phase 3, cellular enhancement. A thick, glowing blue liquid began to fill the chamber, rising up around her body. It was warm and heavy, and it shimmered like light on water. As it touched her skin, it sank into her, filling her veins with heat and electricity. She gasped, her eyes snapping open, and for a moment everything was sharp and clear. She could see the smallest details, the cracks in the glass, the tiny beads of sweat on Dr. Varen's forehead, even the faint pulse in the assistant's neck outside. But then, something unexpected happened. The lights above her flickered. The blue liquid in the tubes pulsed violently, and the chamber shook. Alarms began to sound, a loud, angry wail that echoed through the lab.dr. Varen stepped forward, her face suddenly tense. "What's happening?" she demanded. An assistant muttered, "The levels are too high. Her body is resisting the program." Inside the chamber, Ilara felt it too. The power inside her was growing, building, until it felt too big for her skin to hold. The straps on her arms and legs began to creak as her muscles tightened. Her breath came fast and hot. She felt her legs, her dead, useless legs, twitch, then kick, once, twice. The straps snapped, got outside. One of the scientists shouted, "She's breaking containment." The glass of the chamber cracked loudly, a spider web of lines racing across its surface. Ilara sat up, tearing the remaining straps off her arms. The blue liquid was boiling now, filling the room with steam. She looked at her hands. They glowed, faintly blue. Her legs moved under her on their own. She stood. The glass exploded outward, shards raining down. Smoke filled the room. The alarms grew louder. Guards rushed forward with weapons drawn. But she didn't feel afraid anymore. She took her first step forward, strong, steady, then another. Her legs held her weight easily, and power surged through her with every breath. She looked at Dr. Varen through the smoke. "You said I would walk again," she said, her voice low and sharp. "But you never told me what else I would become." Dr. Varen's expression was unreadable. Perhaps even impressed. Phase 4, the doctor whispered to herself. She survived Phase 4. But before Ilara could speak again, the floor beneath her shook violently. Another alarm sounded, louder, more urgent. The scientist at the console turned pale and shouted, "Subject 12 has woken up." Everyone froze. Ilara stared at them, confused. "Subject 12?" she asked. But no one answered her. Instead, from somewhere deep in the shadows of the lab, she heard a sound that chilled her to the bone. A roar. Something was coming. Something worse than she could imagine. And she realized, as she stood there in the wreckage of the chamber, that her trial was only just beginning. Asterisk, first step smoke curled in the air as pieces of shattered Glass crunched under Alara's bare feet. For the first time in 10 years, she was standing. Standing on her own legs. No wheelchair, no support. And yet, it didn't feel like she had simply regained what was lost. No, she felt more. More alive, more aware, more powerful. Every sound around her was sharp and clear. The crackle of sparking wires, the soft hiss of steam leaking from the machines, the terrified whispers of the assistants hiding behind consoles. Even her own heartbeat sounded stronger, heavier. But the roar from the shadows, that sound silenced everything else. Elara turned her head toward the far end of the lab. Darkness hung there, thick and heavy, beyond the broken lights. The shadows seemed to breathe. Dr. Valoran spoke first, her voice tight and low. Subject 12, it's loose. Everyone evacuate. The words sent the room into chaos. Scientists scrambled for the exits. Warning lights flashed red across the walls. Guards moved toward the darkness, rifles raised, but their hands were trembling. Elar stayed where she was, rooted to the floor, staring into the black. What is it? She demanded. Dr. Varen looked at her with something like regret. What you would have become, she said, if you weren't different. Then she turned and ran. The roar came again, louder now, closer. It was followed by a crash, something heavy slamming into the walls, bending metal, shattering glass. Elara felt it before she saw it. The air shifted, growing colder and sharper. And then it stepped out of the shadows. Subject 12. It was once human. She could tell by the faint shape of its face, the two eyes glowing faintly blue like hers. But everything else was wrong. Its arms were too long, its back hunched, its skin stretched and split where muscle and bone grew beyond natural limits. Cables and wires still hung from its body, trailing sparks behind it. It looked at her, and in its gaze she saw something terrifying. Hunger got it charged. The guards opened. Fire, the air filling with the sound of gunshots and screams. But the bullets did nothing. Subject 12 moved fast, faster than her eyes could follow. It swiped one of the guards aside like a rag doll, smashing him into the wall. Another guard tried to run, but it caught him and flung him across the room. Elara stumbled backward. As the creature advanced. Her first instinct was to flee, to follow the others. But her legs refused to move. No, not refused. They chose. They rooted her in place, strong, defiant. Something inside her whispered, stand your ground. So she did. When Subject 12 lunged at her, she moved. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She ducked, the creature's claws slicing through the air above her head. She rolled to the side, a move she didn't even know she could do, and came up on her feet, facing it. Her heart pounded, but her breathing stayed. Calm. She could feel the power in her legs, coiled like a spring. Subject 12 turned to face her, confused, maybe even surprised. Elara clenched her fists. You think you're stronger than me? She whispered. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, steady, cold. Then she struck. She launched herself forward, faster than she ever moved before. The floor cracked under her feet from the force. She slammed into the creature's chest, and they both crashed through a glass wall and into another room. Subject 12 roared in pain, but not defeat. It twisted, its claws scraping across her arm. She winced, but the wound was already closing. They circled each other in the ruined room, blue lights flickering above them. You are me, she said through gritted teeth, but I am better. It snarled in reply, then attacked again, but this time she was ready. She ducked under its swing and delivered a powerful kick to its side. It stumbled back, smashing, into a console that exploded in sparks. But just as she thought she had the upper hand, it lashed out and caught her by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Its grip was like iron. Ela gasped for air, her feet kicking uselessly, and then she remembered. The power isn't just in your legs. The whisper came again. It's in all of you. She focused, felt the strange electric energy coursing through her veins. She grabbed its arm with both hands and, with a roar, ripped it free. The creature staggered back. Stunned. She didn't hesitate. She tackled it, slamming it down, and pinned it to the ground. Her glowing eyes met its, and for a moment, she saw something there, fear. But before she could strike the final blow, Dr. Varine's voice rang out over the speakers. Enough! Subject 13, stand down. Alara froze, her hands still gripping Subject 12's chest. If you kill it, Varyn continued, you will kill yourself too. You are bound. Alara glanced down at the creature beneath her. Its breathing was shallow now, its strength fading. She could feel its energy, the same energy in her, slipping away. Bound. She let go. Subject 12 collapsed, its body going limp, the blue glow in its eyes fading to nothing. She stood, breathing hard, her hands shaking. Guards entered the room slowly, weapons lowered, unsure of what to do. They stared at her glowing skin, her steady stance, her defiance with something like awe. Dr. Varyn entered last, calm as ever. She stopped a few feet away and nodded. You survived, she said simply. And now? Alara asked, her voice hoarse. Now, Varyn said, you walk into your new life. Alara turned her eyes to the shattered body of Subject 12, then to her own hands, still faintly glowing. What if I don't want this life? She asked quietly. Too late for that, Varyn replied, a faint smile on her lips. The alarms finally fell silent. The red lights dimmed. And yet, inside Alara, the storm still raged. She walked slowly toward the exit of the room, the scientists and guards parting to let her through. Her legs were steady now, stronger with every step. But as she passed Dr. Varyn, the woman leaned closer and whispered, You're only at the beginning, Alara. The world out there will fear you. And when it does, remember, you were made to survive. Alara didn't look back. She pushed open the next door and stepped into a new corridor. Long, dark, and full of whispers. She didn't know what waited at the end. But this time, she wasn't afraid. The truth corridor ahead of Alara was quiet, but not peaceful. Dim lights flickered above her, and the walls seemed to hum faintly, as if the building itself was alive. Her bare feet touched the cold metal floor with surprising ease, each step confident, each muscle in her legs awake and strong. Yet somewhere deep inside, a storm still raged. She couldn't forget what Dr. Varyn had said. You're only at the beginning. Behind her lay the broken chamber, the shattered remains of Subject 12. Ahead lay darkness, and she felt it. In her bones, answers. But what if she didn't like those answers? She kept walking. After what felt like hours, the corridor opened into a vast room, larger than she imagined possible underground. Rows and rows of glass tubes stretched out before her. Each tube glowed faintly blue, and inside each one floated a human figure. Some were still, some twitched, and some weren't entirely human anymore. Alara froze. She moved closer to the nearest tube. Inside was a young man, maybe her age. Wires ran into his arms and chest. His eyes were open but empty. His skin cracked where metal and bone seemed to merge. A label at the base read, Subject 9, terminated. She swallowed hard and looked to the next tube. Subject 10, unstable. And the next, Subject 11. Non-viable. Then she came to a darkened tube. The glass was shattered from the inside. Blue liquid still dripped down the sides, and claw marks were gouged into the walls. Subject 12 escaped. She stepped back, her stomach turning. All of them, all of these people, had gone through what she did. But only she was still. Standing, you understand now. A voice said softly behind her. She spun around. Dr. Armour stood in the shadows, arms folded, watching her. "What is this?" Alara demanded. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "This," Vaerin said, walking closer, "is the truth. This is what we've been working toward. A stronger human. A better human." "They're dead," Alara said, gesturing at the tubes. "No," Vaerin corrected. "They failed. You succeeded. At what cost?" Alara snapped. "You turned them into monsters." Vaerin tilted her head. "Monsters?" She repeated. "Or pioneers. They walked the path so you could reach the end." Alara shook her head. "Why me?" She whispered. "Why am I different?" For the first time, Vaerin hesitated. Then she sighed. "Because," she said slowly, "you weren't chosen at random. You've been watched, Alara. Since the day of your accident." Alara frowned. "What are you talking about?" Vaerin smiled faintly and pulled a tablet from her coat. She tapped the screen, and a hologram flickered to life between them. An image of Alara as a child, running in her schoolyard. Another image, Alara in her hospital bed after the crash. Another, her sitting alone in her wheelchair, staring out at the rain. "You have always been resilient," Vaerin said. "Even when your body failed, your will did not. That's what makes you perfect." Alara's chest tightened. She stepped forward and snatched the tablet from Vaerin's hands. She scrolled through the images, hundreds of them. Her life, recorded in secret. "You watched me?" she said, her voice low with fury. "We invested in you," Vaerin corrected calmly. "You survived what no one else could because you were meant to." Alara's hands shook as she dropped the tablet to the floor. It shattered. "You ruined my life," she said through clenched teeth. "We gave you a new one." Vaerin shot back. "Look at you. You can walk, run, fight. You're more alive than anyone out there." Alara glared at her. "I didn't ask for this," she hissed. Vaeren smiled. "Maybe not, but now you are this." Suddenly, alarms blared again. Red lights flashed across the room. An assistant burst in, breathless. "Dr. Vaerin," he gasped. "The upper level's security. Breach! Someone's here." Vaerin's eyes narrowed. "Who?" The assistant shook his head. "We don't know, but they've taken out our guards. They're heading this way." Vaerin muttered a curse and turned back to Alara. "Stay here," she ordered, but Alara stepped forward. "No," she said, firmly. Vaerin raised an eyebrow. "What? You wanted a stronger human?" Alara continued. "Then let me handle this." Vaerin studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Very well," she said. "Show me you deserve to live." The assistant handed Alara a sleek black blade and stepped aside. She didn't need it, but she took it anyway. She followed the sound of shouting and gunfire down another corridor, her senses sharp, her legs carrying her faster than she could think. She reached a large doorway where the guards had already fallen. Beyond it stood 3 figures in black armor, carrying strange weapons. They didn't look surprised to see her. The tallest of them stepped forward. "Subject 13, he said. His voice was distorted through his helmet. She tightened her grip on the blade. "Who are you?" she demanded. He chuckled. "Friends," he replied. "Here to set you free." She frowned. "Free from what?" "From them," he said, jerking his head toward the lab behind her. You think they made you stronger? No, they made you theirs. But we can help you become yours again. Something about his tone sent a chill through her. Why should I trust you? She asked. The man tilted his head. Because, he said, we're the only ones who can tell you the whole truth. He raised his hand. But first, he added, you'll have to fight us. Before she could answer, the two others charged. Elara moved instinctively. She ducked under the first attacker's swing, slashed upward with the blade, and sent him crashing into the wall. The second swung a baton at her head. She caught his arm mid-swing and snapped it cleanly. The leader stepped forward slowly, clapping his hands. Impressive, he said. Then he dropped into a fighting stance. But let's see what you can really do. They clashed in a blur of motion. Strikes, kicks, dodges, faster and sharper than she'd ever moved before. Her body felt like fire and lightning, her muscles burning with power she didn't know she had at last. She pinned him to the wall, her blade at his throat. He chuckled, unbothered. Good, he said. You're ready. She glared at him. Ready for what? She demanded. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper now. To burn this place to the ground, he said, and to find out who you really are. Before she could ask more, he pressed something into her hand, a small black card, and slipped away into the shadows, his men following him. The alarms quieted. The light steadied. Elar. Ace stood alone in the wreckage, staring at the card. It bore just two words. Come find us. She tightened her grip around it and looked back toward the glowing tubes behind her. She knew now. Dr. Varen hadn't told her everything. Not even close, but she would find out. Even if she had to tear the whole world apart to do it. The escape Elara stood in the silence, clutching the black card. Come find us. The words burned in her mind as she turned the card over and over between her fingers. She didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but somehow she knew this was no longer just about her legs or her body or even her survival. This was bigger. Much bigger. She slipped the card into her pocket and looked around. Tubes in the great hall glowed faintly behind her, casting long shadows. The bodies inside, still and silent, watched her with dead eyes. Even in failure, they seemed to whisper, don't waste what we lost. She took a deep breath and started toward the nearest exit. But as she reached the heavy steel door at the far end of the room, Dr. Marine's voice rang out from above, sharp and cold. Subject 13. Stop. Elara froze. She looked up. A balcony stretched above the chamber, and there was Varen standing at its edge, flanked by guards. You can't leave, Varen continued. Not yet. Elara stared at her, her jaw tight. Watch me, she said. Varen sighed and gave a small nod. Then we'll have to stop you. The guards raised their rifles. Elara's body moved before her mind could catch up. The first shot fired, a streak of light that cracked against the wall where she'd been standing only a heartbeat before. She darted forward, sliding low, feeling the heat of bullets cutting the air above her head. The door in front of her groaned and slammed shut. She cursed under her breath and spun around, scanning the room. One of the guards leapt down from the balcony, landing in front of her. He lunged with a stun baton, but she sidestepped and grabbed his arm, twisting it until the weapon fell to the floor. With a quick shove, she sent him sprawling. Another guard jumped down, this one faster. He swung a blade at her, and sparks flew as it scraped across the metal floor where she'd been standing. She caught his collar, pulling him off balance, and planted her knee hard in his chest. He collapsed in a heap, but more were coming. Above her, Varen still watched, her expression unreadable. You're making a mistake, she called. Elara met her gaze. The mistake was trusting you. She leapt onto a nearby console and vaulted up toward the balcony. The metal groaned under her weight, but she didn't stop. Her fingers caught the edge, and with a surge of strength, she hauled herself over. 2 guards rushed at her. She ducked under the first, swept his legs out from under him, then spun to meet the second with a sharp elbow to the jaw. Both went down. Now she stood face to face with Varen. The doctor didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled faintly. "You're better than I expected," Varen said softly. "You should have expected more," Elara replied. For a moment, they just stared at each other, predator and prey, though it was no longer clear which was which. Then Elara turned and ran. The hallway beyond the balcony was narrow and dark. But she didn't hesitate. Alarms blared all around her now. Steel shutters slammed down over some of the passages, but she slipped through before they could close completely. She passed rooms filled with equipment she didn't recognize, doors marked with strange symbols, windows that looked into labs even more horrific than the one she'd left. She caught glimpses of other test subjects, some unconscious, some awake and watching her with haunted eyes. She whispered under her breath as she ran, "I'll come back for you." The corridor opened into a stairwell. She took the steps 3 at a time, her legs carrying her higher, faster, stronger than she'd ever moved before. At the top, a heavy door blocked her path, but she didn't stop. She slammed her shoulder into it, and with a screech of metal, it burst open. Blinding light hit her eyes. She staggered out into the open air and froze. She was standing on a rooftop. The world stretched out before her, a sprawling city of steel and glass, bathed in the pale light of dawn. Skyscrapers rose like mountains around her, and far below, tiny cars moved along glowing roads. The wind whipped through her hair, cool and sharp. But she had no time to admire the view. Behind her, the door slammed open again, and more guards poured out. She bolted across the roof. One of the guards fired. The shot clipped her shoulder, but the wound closed almost instantly. She leapt over vents and cables, her feet finding perfect balance. The edge of the roof came closer, but she didn't slow down. The guard shouted behind her, "Stop! You can't escape." She reached the edge and didn't hesitate. She jumped. Time seemed to slow as she flew through the air, the wind roaring in her ears, the ground a blur far below. Her legs absorbed the impact as she landed on the roof of the next building. Pain shot through her ankles, but it faded. Just as fast, she ran again, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, her body moving like it belonged to someone else, someone stronger, faster, unstoppable. But she knew they wouldn't stop chasing her. Not yet. She heard the hum of engines and looked up. Black drones streaked through the sky above her, their red lights blinking like angry eyes. She ducked into a stairwell and raced downward, floor after floor, until she burst out into an alley. The city was alive now. People, noise, light, and she melted into the crowd. She pulled the hood of her jacket over her head and kept moving, weaving between people, avoiding cameras. Behind her, the drones swept overhead. Guards in black suits moved through the streets, scanning faces. But no one looked twice at her. Finally, after what felt like hours, she slipped into a quiet side street and pressed herself against a wall, breathing hard. For the first time since the procedure, she felt tired. She slid down to the ground, resting her head against her knees. Her hands shook, her body still buzzing with energy she didn't fully understand. Slowly, she pulled the black card from her pocket. Come find us. She turned it over, and noticed now a faint map etched into the surface, visible only when the light hit it just right. She smiled faintly. Above her, the sky was turning gold with morning. Somewhere out there, they were waiting for her. Whoever they were, Dot, and for the first time, she felt like she wasn't running away anymore. She was running toward something. She stood, tucked the card back into her pocket, and stepped out. Into the sunlight. Dot behind her, the lab still stood, hidden, waiting, but she didn't look back. Ahead of her, the city stretched out like a puzzle, and she was ready to solve it. Asterisk, the battle city at night was alive with lights and noise, but Alara barely noticed. She moved through the streets like a shadow, her hood up, her eyes fixed on the faint map burned into her memory. Every turn she took brought her closer to the place the card had shown her, and the closer she got, the heavier the air seemed to feel, as though the city itself knew what was coming. At last, she arrived. It was an abandoned train station at the edge of the city, forgotten, overgrown, silent except for the faint wind whistling through broken windows. Above the doorway, faded letters spelled out a name she couldn't quite read. She pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Shattered tiles and scraps of paper covered the floor. But there, at the far end, a faint blue light glowed, spilling through a crack in the wall. She followed it. The crack opened into a hidden stairwell, spiraling down into the earth. At the bottom, the glow brightened, and voices reached her ears. Low, sharp, urgent. She stepped into the chamber. And froze. Dozens of people in black armor stood in rows, their weapons gleaming under the blue light. At the center of the room was the man who had given her the card, the one who had called her Subject 13 and then let her go. He turned when he heard her, and a faint smile crossed his face. "You came," he said. ELARA, single quotes, S, hands curled into fists. "You didn't give me much choice," she replied. He chuckled softly and nodded toward the others. "You don't know yet, do you? What you really are?" She glared at him. "I know enough. I know they used me. Turned me into this." He shook his head slowly. "They didn't turn you into anything," he said. "They only woke it up." Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Humans like you don't come from their labs. You come from us. We've been waiting for someone who could survive, someone strong enough to finish this." She stared at him, confusion knotting her stomach. "Finish what?" He gestured behind him to a massive door sealed at the back of the chamber. It was carved with strange symbols, glowing faintly. "The war," he said simply. "What war?" He turned back to her, his eyes sharp and cold now. "The one that began the day they decided humans weren't good enough anymore." Before she could answer, an ear-splitting alarm ripped through the chamber. Red lights flared, bathing the room in blood-colored glow. One of the armored soldiers ran up, breathless. "They found us," he said. "They're here." The leader's smile faded. "Of course they are," he muttered. The ground shook under their feet, the sound of boots, gunfire, and crashing metal coming closer. He looked at Alara again. "It's time," he said. "Time for what?" she asked. His expression hardened. "To pick a side." Before she could answer, the wall behind them exploded in a shower of smoke and stone. Soldiers in black and silver armor poured in, weapons blazing. Energy bolts crackled across the chamber, striking walls, shattering pillars, throwing sparks into the air. The leader barked an order. "Defensive line! Hold them back!" The room erupted into chaos. Lara ducked as a blast slammed into the floor beside her, spraying her with debris. Instinct took over. She lunged at the nearest attacker, tearing the rifle from his hands and throwing him aside. Another charged at her. She spun, kicked his legs out from under him, and sent him crashing into a wall. But they kept coming. Wave after wave, all around. Her soldiers fought and fell. The blue light above flickered, the air thick with smoke and screams. Ilara's pulse roared in her ears. She could feel something rising inside her, something vast and dangerous. Like a storm that had been waiting too long to break, the leader appeared beside her, tossing her a blade. "You want to survive?" he shouted over the din. She caught the blade, her grip tightening. "I want to win," she shot back. He grinned despite the chaos. "Then show me." They fought side by side, cutting through the attackers, their movements sharp and sure. She felt the power in her legs, in her arms, in her chest, stronger than before. The energy inside her burned brighter with every blow. But then the leader froze, his eyes going wide. "They brought it," he said quietly. Elar. A turned and saw it. From the smoke emerged a towering figure, taller than any human, its body a fusion of muscle, steel, and blue light. Its eyes glowed like fire, and its hands ended in long, curved blades. She felt the air grow colder. "What is that?" she breathed. The leader's jaw tightened. "The final weapon," he said. "Project Omega." The creature moved fast, too fast, cutting down soldiers left and right. No blade touched it. No bullet slowed it. Elara stepped forward, her heart hammering. "How do we stop it?" she asked. The leader met her eyes. "You don't," he said. "You become more than it." She swallowed hard. "How?" "You stop holding back." The words echoed in her mind. She clenched her fists, feeling the strange energy rise higher, hotter, until it roared through her veins like lightning. She launched herself at the creature. The room blurred around her. As she moved, faster than sound, her blade cutting a streak of blue light through the smoke, she slammed into it with all her strength, and for the first time, it staggered. It swung at her. She ducked, then struck again, sparks flying as her blade sliced through metal and flesh. It roared and caught her by the arm, lifting her high, but she didn't feel fear. She felt alive. She drew her other hand back, fingers glowing now with raw energy, and drove it straight into the creature's chest. The light inside her exploded outward, filling the chamber with blinding white. When it faded, the creature lay still, its body cracked and broken. The blue fire in its eyes gone. Silence fell. The leader stepped toward her slowly, his eyes wide, with something like awe. "You did it," he said. Elara stood over the remains of Project Omega, her breath coming fast, her skin faintly glowing. "No," she said softly. "Not yet. Not yet." She turned toward the massive sealed door at the back of the chamber, still untouched, still glowing faintly. She could feel something behind it. Something waiting. She looked back at the leader. "What's on the other side?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he just smiled faintly and said, "That's your final battle." Elara nodded, her grip tightening on the blade. She walked toward the door, and as the soldiers around her began to whisper her name, as though she were already a legend, she whispered to herself, "No more running, no more holding back. This ends now." And she pushed the door open. The choicest door groaned as Elara pushed it open. A blast of icy air hit her face, carrying with it a strange hum, low, ancient, almost alive. The chamber beyond was nothing like the sterile labs or the crumbling city above. It was vast, circular, with walls carved from black stone that shimmered faintly under the blue light of symbols etched deep into them. In the center of the chamber stood a single pedestal, and above it floated something. A sphere. Black, but not quite solid, shifting, swirling, as if it contained an entire storm inside. Flashes of blue lightning arced across its surface. It spun slowly, humming louder the closer she came. Elara stepped forward, her Footsteps echoing through the stillest dot behind her. The leader's voice carried into the chamber. "This is it," he said softly. She glanced back. He stood at the threshold, his soldiers waiting behind him, their weapons lowered, their faces unreadable. She turned back to the sphere. "What is it?" she asked. "Everything," he replied. She frowned. "That's not an answer." He stepped closer, stopping just at the edge of the light. "It's the source," he said quietly, "of what they put in you, of what you've become, of what we are." She stared at the swirling darkness. "So it's a machine?" He shook his head. "No, it's not human. It's older than us, older than this world. It fell here, long before our kind learned to walk, and it waited. It waited for someone strong enough to wake it." Ilara felt a chill crawl up her spine. "And now it's awake?" He nodded. "And it wants you to decide." She swallowed hard, her gaze locked on the sphere. "Decide?" "What?" The leader exhaled slowly. "To keep it, or to end it." Silence filled the room. He took another step closer. "If you take it," he said, his voice low and steady, "you'll become something no human has ever been. No more pain. No more limits. You'll have the power to reshape everything, the cities, the skies, the stars themselves. No one could stop you." She felt the hum of the sphere in her chest now, like a second heartbeat. "And if I destroy it?" she asked. He glanced at the soldiers behind him, then back at her. "Then you save what's left of humanity. But you give up everything you've gained, the power, the strength. You'll be ordinary again." Ilara stood there, her fists clenching and unclenching, her breath catching in her throat. She remembered the years in the wheelchair, the pain, the loneliness, the nights she'd stared at her legs, hating them for failing her. And she remembered the way she felt now, alive, unstoppable, more than human. She looked at the leader. "Why me?" She whispered. His expression softened just a little. "Because you're the only one who's still human enough to choose," he said. She turned back to the sphere. Its light brightened as she approached. She could feel its pull now, warm, irresistible, like it knew her better than she knew herself. Visions flashed before her eyes. A city rebuilt from ash, shining towers that touched the clouds, armies bowing before her, calling her name. The earth itself reshaped by her hands, oceans parted, skies set on fire. And then another vision, quieter, smaller, herself sitting in a park, on a bench. Legs weak, body fragile, but smiling. Surrounded by children, laughter, sunlight, ordinary. But whole. She reached out a hand toward the sphere, and then stopped. She looked back at the leader. "What happens if I take it?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "You'll never be human again," he said. She closed her eyes. "And if I destroy it?" he hesitated. "Then none of us will ever be this strong again. Not you. Not me. No one." Ilara stood there, her hand hovering just above the surface of the sphere. The power pulsed through the air, whispering promises in her mind. "You will never suffer again. You will never kneel again. You will never lose again," she thought. Of the others, subjects 9, 10, 11, 12, who'd failed, who'd suffered, who'd died. She thought of Dr. Viaren, watching from her balcony, calling her an experiment. She thought of the soldiers who'd fought beside her, their hope resting on her shoulders. She opened her eyes, and she made her choice. With a deep breath, she drew back her fist and slammed it into the sphere. The chamber shook violently as the sphere cracked, a blinding light pouring out of it. The hum rose to a scream, and the walls around her split and crumbled. She felt the power surge through her one last time, a firestorm of energy and pain and fury. Before it all stopped. Silence. When she opened her eyes, The sphere was gone. Just gone. The leader stared at her from across the room, his face pale. You, he began, but his voice failed him. She straightened slowly, her knees weak now, her hands shaking. The glow was gone from her skin. The strange strength in her muscles had faded. Her legs felt heavy, clumsy, human, but she was still standing. It's over, she said softly. The leader lowered his gaze. You destroyed it, he murmured. She nodded. Someone had to. The soldiers behind him watched in silence as she walked past them, back toward the doorway. When she reached the threshold, she paused and looked back. You said humans worked. Good enough, she said, her voice quiet but sharp. You were wrong. She turned and climbed the stairs, leaving the chamber behind her. Above ground, the sun was rising, painting the city gold and pink. Alara stepped into the light and felt the warmth on her face. Her body ached, her legs trembled. But she smiled, because she was free. The streets below were already filling with people, ordinary people. They didn't look at her. They didn't know her name. They didn't know what she'd done. And that was okay. She walked down the steps, feeling the weight of her own body, her own breath, her own humanity. It was enough. Somewhere far below. In the darkness of the broken chamber, the leader stood before the shattered pedestal. He crouched down and ran a hand over the cracked stone, his face hard. One of his soldiers spoke softly. What now? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he straightened and whispered. She made her choice. Now we find out if she was right. Above, in the morning light, Alara walked down a quiet street, her hands in her pockets, her head held high. She didn't know what came next, but she knew one thing. She was alive. She was human. And that was enough.